What is a method? A method is a small group of reusable code that carries out a single task. Let me point out the key word in that sentence is reusable. So let me say the whole sentence again. A method is a small group of reusable code that carries out a single task. First, we will briefly go over the syntax of a method. Then we will show an actual code sample of a method. The syntax of a method contains an access modifier, static modifier, return type, name, and parameters. Some of these are optional. First, let's look at the access modifier. In our case, we're using public. Other examples would be internal, private, and protected. Static methods are shared by all instances of the class, meaning the method can be accessed directly from the class name. If static is not declared, it is non-static by default. Next, let's look at our return type. In our case, we're using int, but you can return any data type here, or return void, but you must declare a return type. A method must also have a name. In our case, we used add2numbers. This name should be self-describing in respect to what the method does. Remember, a method should only do one action, and this should describe that action. A method can also have values set to it, and that's where parameters come in. In our method, we are using parameters num1 and num2. Next, we're going to create a method in code. I'm going to start with the word private because this only needs to be accessed within this class. I'm going to say static, void because we're not returning anything. And then the actual method name, I'm going to call it add2numbers. And it's not currently receiving any parameters. So we are going to make two numbers here. So I'm going to say int num1 equals 5, int num2 equals 6. I'm then going to add those numbers together. Int total equals num1 plus num2. And then finally, I'm going to output the total. So I'm going to type in cw tab that displays console.writeLine for me. And I'm just going to type in the word total. And then finally, we need to also call the method. So I'm going to say add2numbers up here. So that will call the method, add2numbers. So as soon as that hits in the main section, it then executes all of this code. In this case, it will output 11. Next, we're going to add parameters. So in this case, we're going to add int num1 and int num2. We can now move this out of the section and back to the main section. We then need to say num1 and num2. These are the values. So basically, with num1, it now equals 5. We are sending 5, basically, to our method. So this is also 5 now. And then that goes here as well. So the key point here is we are sending the value to the method. And finally, we want to return a value. So we need to change the word from void to what we're going to return. In this case, it's going to be an int. And we are going to now return a value. So we need to say the word return. And then what we're going to return is total. So previously, our method, it did two things, basically. It added numbers and it also outputted them. But a method should really only do one thing. So I'm going to move this out of this section now to help clean up the method. And I will output it in the main section now instead. And we can also simplify our method a bit. So instead of just totaling it and then returning it, we can do that all in one step. So now I can just say return here. And I can simplify that a bit. Now I always say a method should only do one thing. That does not mean it should only be on one line usually. In this case, we only need one line, but it's really a method should only do one concept. So in this case, it's adding two numbers. So finally, let's do a complete recap of what is going on. So we have two numbers, num5 and 6. They are sent to our method as 5 and 6. They end up down here in the method as 5 and 6. We add them together. We return the value. So now the total is 11 and it outputs 11. This method is very dynamic in the sense that I can change this value to 2, for example, and the output will now be 8. Remember, methods should be reusable and they should only do one thing.